In this video, we are building a practical model selection strategy for developers using Cursor with React, Laravel, and TypeScript. The point is not to chase a famous model name. The point is to know which model to use for the exact job in front of you. Some models are better at final production code. Some are better at reading a large project. Some are best for cheap scaffolding. And some are specialists that help when TypeScript types, backend contracts, or documentation become painful. By the end, you should have a simple workflow. Draft with the right tool, refine with the right tool, and review with the right tool before anything reaches production. Model choice matters because AI code can look confident even when it is wrong. A bad model choice can waste hours, create subtle bugs, or generate code that passes a quick glance but fails once it touches real users. In Cursor, the model is not just a preference in a dropdown. It becomes part of your engineering workflow. React, Laravel, and TypeScript all have different failure modes. React code can become messy and inaccessible. Laravel code can miss validation, policies, or clean API resources. TypeScript code can compile only after you weaken the types. So the goal is to stop switching randomly and start matching the model to the task. Use one model when you need clean final code, another for long context refactoring, another for low-cost drafts, and another for careful review. The top overall recommendation in this deck is OpenAI GPT Latest for production code. Think of this as the model you reach for when quality matters more than cheap experimentation. It is strong for clean React components, strict TypeScript, Laravel backend logic, and test generation. In a real workflow, this is the model I would use when the code needs to be close to merge ready. For example, generating a typed React component with accessible form states, creating a Laravel form request with policy checks, or writing tests that match the actual behavior instead of only the happy path. The key idea is reliability. When you are working on production code, a slightly more expensive model can be cheaper than debugging fragile generated code later. Gemini 255 Pro is positioned as the long context refactoring model. This is the model to consider when the problem is bigger than a single file. Maybe your React frontend and Laravel backend have drifted apart. Maybe your API contract changed and now types, routes, resources, and UI calls all need to move together. Maybe you are reviewing an entire module and need the model to notice duplicated logic across files. Long context matters because architecture problems usually live between files, not inside one function. Use this kind of model for project-wide review, migration planning, and refactoring plans. But do not use it blindly. Ask it to produce a plan first, list the files it wants to touch, and explain the risk before editing. Claude Opus Latest is best treated like a senior code reviewer. It may not always be the fastest model for raw code generation, but it is excellent when you want careful reasoning, trade-off analysis, and safer refactoring. This is especially useful after another model has already written the first draft. For example, you might ask GPT Latest or Qwen3 Coder to generate a Laravel module, then ask Claude to review it for TypeScript safety, React performance, Laravel security, and maintainability. The powerful pattern here is second-pass review. Tell it to suggest minimal diffs, identify risky assumptions, and explain why each change matters. That keeps the review useful instead of turning it into a full rewrite. Qwen3 Coder is the cost-effective scaffolding option. This matters because not every coding task deserves your most expensive model. If you need CRUD files, root skeletons, migration drafts, controller outlines, service classes, or test placeholders, a fast and cheaper coding model can save a lot of time. The right mental model is first draft, not final authority. Let Qwen3 Coder produce structure quickly, then validate the result with GPT Latest or Claude before merging. This is especially useful in Laravel, where one feature often touches many files: migration model, factory, request validation controller, resource routes, and tests. Use Qwen to get the shape in place, then use a stronger reviewer to harden the details. Arcee AI Coder Large and Arcee AI Virtuoso Large sit in the practical middle of the workflow. Arcee Coder Large is useful when you want concise implementation help. A React TypeScript form, a backend service method, a focused utility, or a small test. It is not always the best choice for huge architectural reasoning, but it can be efficient for day-to-day coding. Arcee Virtuoso Large is more useful when the work crosses front-end and back-end boundaries. For example, you might ask it to understand a Laravel endpoint and the React component consuming it, then explain whether the data contract is consistent. In a cost-aware workflow, these models help you avoid using premium models for every small task. Olmo 332, Bthink, and GPT-4 Turbo Preview are specialist and backup options. Olmo is interesting when the problem is reasoning-heavy rather than just code-heavy. Think complex TypeScript generics, state machine design exhaustive reducer checks, or algorithms where the edge cases matter. In those moments, ask the model to reason through the design before it writes code. GPT-4 Turbo Preview is positioned more like a fallback. If your primary GPT model is unavailable or rate-limited, it can still help with general coding tasks, documentation, and debugging. The key lesson is that not every model in your toolkit needs to be the daily driver. Some models are valuable because they handle narrow situations well. DeepSeek v3.11 and Kimi K2 are also specialist tools. DeepSeek v3.11 is useful when TypeScript inference becomes difficult. For example, generic constraints, discriminated unions, overloaded functions, or type mismatches that appear far away from the real source of the problem. Instead of asking for a full rewrite, ask for the smallest type annotation or refactor that explains the error. Kimi K2 is stronger for long context review and documentation work. It can help summarize modules, explain project structure, or turn messy implementation details into developer-friendly docs. Used well, these models complement your main workflow. They are not replacing the production model, the refactoring model, or the reviewer. They fill gaps. The final workflow is the most important part of the deck. Do not rely on one model for everything. Scaffold with Qwen3 Coder or Arcee Coder when you need speed and cost efficiency. Refine with GPT Latest when the implementation needs production-quality TypeScript, React patterns, and Laravel logic. Review with Claude Opus when you need safety, security, maintainability, and clear trade-offs. Use Gemini 255 Pro when the task spans many files or requires architectural context. Reach for DeepSeek or Olmo when TypeScript reasoning becomes difficult. Use Kimi for documentation and long context summaries. The best model is not just a model. It is a strategy for each phase of development. That is the practical cursor model workflow for React, Laravel, and TypeScript. Use the ranking as a map, not as a permanent truth, because model quality changes quickly. What should not change is your process. Choose based on the task, control the scope, validate the output, and review before merging. If this saved you time, subscribe to Life of Geeks for more practical AI development workflows. And if you want the next video to include a hands-on prompt pack for Cursor, comment Cursor below.